The Notcast, life, love and misery and deep shit.
Do you ever wonder, what the fuck am I doing here? Is this it? Maybe you've got the car, career, house, family and friends, everything that should make you happy. But still, there's this tenacious sense of being trapped, stuck, lost, or just a bit bloody empty. Welcome to the Notcast podcast, where two therapist coaches, aka theracoaches, lay bare their psycho-spiritual journey of struggle, strife, and realization in their soul search for the keys to a happier, more fulfilling life.
So, episode 14 of the Notcast. Loneliness. 3 delusions that keep you disconnected and stop you feeling the love again.
Got love into the title this time. Love
in
it.
Every single episode, right? Every single episode.
Every single episode. Every single episode. But, you know. But we chose the title together. So you're part of that too.
This is true. I think that bit might have even been my idea.
Yeah, right? I was like, woo!
How the fuck can we change that? Oh, no, we can't. It's stuck forever now.
Yeah.
We're going to get rid of that.
Love it, love it, love it.
So loneliness.
Loneliness.
What does loneliness mean to you?
Well, first off, I realise it's a word that I struggle to spell.
Start with the basics.
Yeah. I realise how many times I spelled it wrong during my time reflecting on it. So that's the first thing. But I guess the realisation through this process and the reflection that loneliness is a feeling and a perception and a state of mind that I created for a lot of my life. Yeah. And use words like, I don't know, loner. I'm so isolated. I'm alone. Introverted. But yeah, the rabbit hole was quite something for this episode, I have to say. So what about for you?
Well, the first thing for me is kind of what you alluded to. Like, there is a real difference for me between loneliness and being alone. And actually, even when I did a brief bit of Googling just to see about the kind of, if you like, the science behind it or what's, you know, generally accepted about it, like they do talk about the difference between loneliness versus solitude.
Yeah.
And I really saw this more deeply myself last year, where I was faced with the option of, I didn't know what to do for Christmas because I'd recently gone through a breakup and I wasn't sure what, because there was the whole lockdown situation and I'm like, what do I do? And there were a couple of options I had, but I was still like, not really sure about them. Might feel like I'm imposing, not sure I want to go there. And something really clicked at some point and I was like, oh, I'm kind of afraid of spending it on my own. Like that's what I'm trying to avoid, spending it on my own.
Yeah.
And when I saw that, I was like, fuck's sake, got to face the dragon.
Of course.
But it was really interesting actually, because as soon as I saw that and then made that decision to say, okay, well, I'm going to do this, I had a completely different experience of it. Actually, I had a really fucking good Christmas on my own.
There you go. Love it.
But that really, really kind of cemented for me, if you like, that difference between like being alone and that experience of loneliness.
Yeah.
Because I think, in the past, that idea of, oh my God, like I'm stuck spending Christmas on my own, that would have been absolute hell. Because it wouldn't have been a choice. I'd have been somehow fighting it in my mind. Whereas because I chose it, because I stepped towards it and got to make it my own, it was like afterwards, I'm like, do you know what? I spend every damn Christmas on my own.
Said the Grinch. Anyway.
I like Christmas, I'll have you know.
if you say so.
Somebody's off my Christmas card list.
Ah, I'm so sad.
Taking back your present as well.
Definitely the Christmas Grinch. Oh, I love it. Yeah, it's really interesting because one of the things that came up for me when I reflected on this was that there have been many spaces where I've been surrounded by people and felt really lonely.
Yeah.
And that was, in fact, I've been in relationships where I've felt really lonely. And in friendships, in groups, at events where I felt really lonely. So that was, and I guess that was for me, because from a headspace, I've always equated, if there's not a lot of people around me, then I'm lonely.
Right.
But actually, I've had loads of people around me and still felt lonely and actually felt lonely rather than being alone. So I think I very much blurred everything together as I've traveled through my life. But then reflecting on it really made me look at the separation between those things.
I guess it's that whole alone in a crowd thing, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's not so much about who you have around you, it's about your internal experience. And I've definitely found that. And something you said first, I think, where you talked about, I can't remember the word you used, but the one that it sparked in my mind was, I'm an outsider.
Yeah.
And I had this real feeling of that for a long time. It was quite an identity of mine. There was something about me being, an outsider. And I could find myself in social situations and just feeling that sense of aloneness and disconnection. And on the outside, there was no reason why I would feel that because I was surrounded by people. And often then it wasn't like they were randomers.
Yeah.
They were like, they could be people I know, or at least know on some level. And yet I would still feel that aloneness.
For sure. Yeah. Which kind of opened up the exploration in a kind of different way. So, because I think for me, it's always been it's something that I've projected outwards.
Tell me more.
So I think I very much, my perception was that I was a terrible person and why would anybody want to talk to me? And that was a projection onto other people. Not that what they were actually, nobody's ever said that to me in those words anyway. So yeah, exploring it, I guess what came up for me and especially the title, The Delusion, because I think I've had a lot of them. Stuff that I've just slapped on other people and gone, yeah, you're thinking this, aren't you? So then I have to withdraw. So yeah. Projection all over the place.
Yeah.
Lots of it.
And that's definitely been an experience of mine that, there was something about me, or I suppose the way it would often come out for me was there was this feeling of not being able to connect and not being able to share, but it was really actually that I was afraid of sharing. I was afraid of being myself. So then it would create this disconnection, at least in my mind. I mean, I suppose objectively, then, there's then less of a connection than could be happening, but it was really the experience of it. And I think, most importantly, it was the experience of, say, wanting this other person to know me more, or wanting to feel more connected, but feeling unable to.
Mm-hmm.
And then in that way, I'm creating that disconnection and that loneliness, and yet not even seeing that I'm doing it. Because I'm like, before then, I might have not even been worried about it. But as soon as I think, I want to be more connected, but I can't, it's like, and now I'm trying to solve that problem in my head.
Yeah.
Whilst slowly feeling more and more disconnected.
Yeah.
And receding into myself and feeling more and more alone and less able to talk to them. And now looking for exits and how do I escape?
How do I get out of here? Yeah.
And then creating a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yeah, that's the one. I think a lot of this, the reflection on this felt like that.
Really?
For me. Yeah, for sure. Just hamster wheels, just endless.
Mm.
Yeah.
Well, I remember one time actually specifically, and this was fucking ages ago. I'd been at like a gathering of sorts with some people, and there was this girl there, and she was flirting with someone else, I think, and I was having a good time with those guys, but I think I was feeling a little bit like, you know, not so connected and integrated.
Mm-hmm.
But I think what I remember was there was banter going on with this girl and someone else, and maybe a couple of other people, but I didn't feel included in that banter.
Right. Got it.
And then that was, well, it seemed okay until I left and then went home. And I remember then feeling really quite lonely and disconnected. And I remember actually, I think I remember journaling about this, and this was ages ago, really before I properly journaled. And like looking back on it now, it's interesting because like I can see how I completely created that. Like the person I was being back then, because I felt a lot more self-conscious and stuff like that. Like I was hardly screaming, you know, come over and banter with me.
Yeah.
So I'm pretty sure I would have been giving out these vibes of I'm not someone who banters.
Yeah.
And yet I'm then seeing her banter with these other people, experiencing me not getting bantered with, then thinking there must be something about me. There's something going on here.
Yeah.
Like I said, then this thing's then in my head. I've then left. Suddenly I'm feeling all lonely. It's like I've just been with a bunch of people hanging out.
Yeah. Right. It's funny the bits that we choose to focus on and what that turns into. Yeah. I get that. I had very similar, kind of reflections when I was looking at it as well. Just over and over again, it was like, oh, that was a self-creation. Oh, that was a self-creation. Oh, that was a self-creation. It's just like, for fuck's sake. Yeah. Yeah. It's like, I had to own that, I created a lot of those experiences. Yeah. Do you think this is a good time to start the delusions?
Go for it. What's your first delusion?
Well, I kind of already approached it, but abandonment of self and disconnection.
Abandonment of self and disconnection.
Yeah, like this is where a lot of my loneliness, or that feeling of loneliness, or my state of mind thinking that I'm lonely, stemmed from. Like I had zero connection to myself. I didn't want to be with myself. So why the fuck would anybody else would have wanted, like, I would tell myself that. It's like, I didn't want to be with myself. So my projection was, obviously nobody wants to talk to me. Obviously I'm not good enough. And obviously I didn't know I had abandoned myself, but how was I going to let anybody else in, considering I had abandoned myself and wasn't even there for myself? So for me, that feeling of loneliness ultimately has always stemmed from when I've disconnected to myself.
Yeah.
And only really understood that because in the more recent years of my life, I never feel lonely. Because why the fuck would I feel lonely when 24/7, 365, I am connected to myself. I have me. And so when I had no relationship to myself, there was a nothingness, an emptiness. And the projection was obviously also everybody's abandoned me because I've abandoned me. And that's where this aloneness and loneliness sort of came from. But then I would again project it outside of me and kind of be like, well, people just don't like me. All the things that I was internally saying about me, I would put onto other people. Kind of go, well, the way they looked at me, it must be the way I look or the way I am or my, way of being, or I'm not good enough, smart enough, or, all of these things, anything other than having to actually authentically connect to myself or somebody else. Yeah. And I know the disconnection was often on purpose because I somehow believed it protected me from people that I guess ultimately I needed to, well, I needed to protect myself from me and what I was doing to me. So yeah, that was ultimately the game I was playing with myself.
Well, I'd love to say that leads on to my first point. It actually leads on to my third point, but we'll do it out of order because that's what we do.
Yeah.
My now first delusion was I'm different. There's something wrong with me.
Love it.
So yeah, it's that believing that there's something about me. I guess it's kind of what I talked to earlier, like an example about when I was at that gathering. Mm-hmm. It's what I would do a lot was be looking at like what am I doing wrong, but not actually looking for like, that's the thing, it'd be like what am I doing wrong. It was some assumption that it was something about me, because actually what am I doing wrong actually sounds like a helpful question. Like what could I change?
Yes,
but it I was never really asking that question helpfully, because I would just get stuck in the loop. And I was at a party, I think, and there was a girl there that I had a little bit of a crush on, and I remember she just, and I was fine, like I was fine having a great time. I think she was quite drunk, and she just sort of came up to me and just kissed me on the cheek and walked off. But something in me obviously was like, oh, that was unexpected. Mm-hmm. Sort of threw me for six. But then I remember something happened. Like I was a bit almost like, what the fuck happened? Like, what does this mean?
What is this?
Yeah, exactly. And then I remember going and finding her like not long after, and then realizing on some level it's like, oh, that didn't mean anything.
Right.
But then, of course, my mind started going.
Yeah.
Right. And then I find myself retreating into myself and, disappearing. And I'm like, I don't know. Suddenly there's this whole battle going on in my mind, and I'm feeling this complete disconnection. And like, I'm retreating into myself. And I'm like, what the fuck is that about?
Yeah.
And I didn't realize that I was the one that was actually creating that. Mm-hmm. Just because I'd made this, I don't know, I'd made some inference from it. Because I think if I remember rightly, like she'd then wandered off and started talking to someone else or something like that. And of course, then I made that whole thing about me. It's like what the hell?
People are good at doing that. It's all about me. It must be me.
But it's like I was absolutely fine and enjoying the party before then. Mm-hmm. And then this thing happened. And then I'm no longer enjoying the party.
Yeah, it's ruined everything.
Yeah, exactly. And, I've that whole like, there's something wrong with me that I often find there's some level of like shame or not okayness with myself that comes with that feeling of loneliness, of disconnection. Like more and more, I see like if I'm feeling that, I'm actually disconnecting myself.
Yeah, I hear that. At that point, I think I should just segue into my next one.
Go for it.
Because it's the walk of shame.
The walk of shame. Absolutely, tell me more.
Yeah, so I'm laughing about it now, but this was a real cycle for me. So when I was a kid, I don't know if I really knew the feeling of shame or anything like that as a child. I wouldn't have been able to label the feeling, but the way I felt about everything that went on in my home, the abuse, the way I was treated, there was something that within made me feel different. And like I couldn't tell people about what went on when I got home, what that was like. And I felt like somehow it had something to do with me. And I, on reflection, felt like I took it on as my shame. I should be ashamed of what's happening, in my house. I can't tell people about it. So then that I would withdraw into myself. And I actually remember one of my friends from school who recently kind of came back into my life. She spoke to me when we went out for once, and she was like, you know, when you were about 11-ish, you told me what was going on at home for you. Mm. And she was like, I just didn't know what to say to you. And I guess as a child, my interpretation of that was I shouldn't speak about it because people don't know how to respond to it. Like, it must be really bad. Terrible, terrible me for even speaking about it. So, yeah. And I've had that as an experience over and over again in my life. So when I was in the abusive relationship, particularly the physically abusive one, there was that shame.
Yeah.
And I felt like I couldn't tell people. I shouldn't tell people. I felt ashamed. I felt humiliated. And it was that thing of, I'm not stopping this. I'm allowing it to happen.
Right.
But also, that relationship meant that my family kind of disowned me. So then I felt even more shame at, how can I tell them? Because I chose the relationship. And now how do I sort of go, well, this is what's going on. And I was very isolated because he had isolated me from my friends and everything like that. So yeah, it just turned into a very, very toxic cycle of me believing that I needed to keep it all inside and then withdrawing completely. But at the same time, feeling like everybody outside of me could see it. Right. They could see the shame. They could see the dirtiness on me, you know, and even if I did connect to people, how would I tell them about my life?
Yeah.
You know? So yeah, that was definitely a cycle that I got stuck in so many times over. Yeah. And I had to work really hard to bring myself out of that.
Yeah, yeah. As you were talking, what that brought up for me was the loneliness that we can feel being in a relationship.
Yeah, for sure.
I remember talking to a mate about this when we were still like teenagers, like late teenagers. And I remember him saying about it back then, about like, never feel as lonely as you do when you feel alone in a relationship.
Yeah.
And yeah, I found that so very true. And I wonder whether that's because, talk from my experience, because it's so, when I felt like that in a relationship, it's often because there's a disconnection between me and my partner, say. But then also I'm not wanting to go out and talk about that with other people. And I think often that's actually because of shame. I know, I've said on a previous podcast, some of it was because, I didn't want to be the person that goes out and bitches about his girlfriend, which is true. But I think it's also the shame about it, like not wanting to go out and be honest about what's going on. Maybe, because I don't want to admit it to myself, because then it's obvious, or more obvious, that, oh, well, what are you going to do about it? Or, fear of getting that kind of response. Being in a relationship, then it's not, if I'm single and lonely, I could technically, there's the thought, I could be like, oh, I could just ring my mates, or I could just go and do this. But I think in a relationship, when there's that loneliness, it's like, oh, I don't know, there's something different about it, because when I've experienced that, it's like the person I actually want to connect with is the person I don't feel I can.
Yeah.
And yeah, and so I kind of get screwed both sides, really. It's like I can't connect with them, and I don't feel I can connect with anyone else.
Yeah.
So I'm just here on my own with my shame thoughts.
Yes. Joyous head fuck, that is.
Yeah. Like, and sometimes when I think about it, like those relationships I've been in, sometimes it has, on one side there's been a there has been a true disconnection. Like there has been a, like I've tried and they've disconnected from me.
Mm-hmm.
But actually sometimes it's been I've been the one creating that disconnection because I don't feel they'll understand, because I feel misunderstood, say, or I'm afraid of the conversation going a certain way, or I'm afraid of showing a certain side of me. So then I try and hide that.
Yeah.
But then sometimes the only way to hide it is, to disconnect.
Yeah.
And especially in relationships, when I think about it, like it's been, I think I spoke about this previously as well. Like if I'm single or if I'm out with friends, say it's easier to almost like tell the story. Oh yeah, this is going great, but let's just not talk about this.
Yeah.
This other stuff. Whereas in a relationship, it's harder to hide that stuff.
Yeah.
It's almost like you can see all of me. So if things aren't working, if I'm feeling, I'm going to retreat from you.
Yeah.
To kind of, to hide that. But then that, in trying to hide this stuff and hide myself from you, then I'm creating disconnection. And now I feel lonely, even though we're together in a relationship.
Yeah. I found that really interesting because in my last relationship, I felt really lonely.
Yeah.
Like really, really lonely. And I feel like at times I just had to disconnect from me too, to kind of stay in that space and not hear the voice that's actually going, what's really going on here? Like, yeah. And then I felt really lonely because again, I would have to abandon myself to not have that and kind of disconnect again to create that so that, there wasn't that internal voice going, what? So yeah, it's funny in relationships how many different ways people can end up lonely.
Well, I don't know about you, but it's in a way I think it's a product of not facing the real problem.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
It's like I'm actually lonely because I'm running away and I'm hiding.
Yeah.
Because I don't. It's like a lot of the time, part of me knows what the I want to say the inverted commas right thing is to do, or the scary thing, like what my heart wants, which is often the scary thing.
Yeah.
But I'm kind of hoping there's a magical way of resolving everything where I don't have to do that.
Yeah.
But I can't bloody find it, so I'm going to hide for a bit and then wonder why I feel like shit.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I'm just going to run away until it resolves itself somehow without me actually doing anything about it.
Well, I suppose that kind of segues somewhat to my second point, which is really about, so what I labeled it as is I prefer my own company, and other things like I don't need anybody. I hate people anyway.
That was my last one. How dare you? How dare you?
Well, where I was going with this is because it's about denial, really, and it's not facing the truth about it. Because I definitely have said in the past, I remember, being a late teenager, early 20s, probably being like, yeah, I hate people.
Me too.
Which is fucking bollocks, really. Like I didn't hate people at all.
Yeah.
Like I love people, actually, but what I worked out at some point, it was like, oh no, you don't hate people. You're just scared of rejection.
That's the one.
But that's painful and scary to admit. So I'll just tell myself I hate people, even though actually there's a few key people that I do really like and I'd be really upset if they left me.
Yeah.
But it defends me against. But yeah. I guess it's the bullshit that our ego can feed us that we end up believing to cover some of those, those fears or those things that we've got that we don't want to look at. But we need a way somehow to not feel useless and rubbish, so we tell ourselves this story.
Yep, absolutely. Mine was actually, because it's the same, so I might as well, I called it finding meaning in the loneliness. It's like, I like being like this. I love it. I don't need people. Who needs people? It's just so complicated when you have people in your life.
I just prefer being on my own.
Yeah. Like, just so much simpler. Apart from all the head fuck that goes with it. Just easy. Yeah.
Well, and I don't know about like, because for me, the thing is that like, I also like, I do like alone time. Like I do like, it's a bit difficult to read a book or to do some study when all my mates are around. So it's like,
Yeah.
I do want some alone time sometimes. But it's the difference between a genuine choice to do that and that kind of reactive, well, yeah, I prefer being on my own.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. I think I used to get quite caught up in what I used to see around me as well. So then that was like, this is how relationships should look, especially on social media and stuff as well, right? Obviously now it's highlighted a lot more. It's like, I look at all these people doing all this stuff and it's like, oh my God, so many people. Like, it's like, I don't know enough people to go out there and know more people, because then I'll kind of have to say, I don't really know a lot of people. I don't want to say that. Yeah. The games, man. So many games. Oh, love it. Where are we at now?
What's your third point?
I don't know. See, this is why it's good that I have so many points, because when we double up like that, I have another choice.
Do you just do it secretly so you can try and guess all of my points? Just so you can go, yeah, got one of that, got that as well. Yeah, all right, I really like that one. That was like my number 5. No. Don't flatter yourself. Secretly, you mean yes, don't you?
No.
Bloody power games.
Oh, I love it. Okay. So I think for the last one, I'm going to go, I am alone in this world.
So sincere, but tell me more.
I was born alone. I will die alone. That's how it's supposed to be. Yeah. I guess overall it's stories. Oh my God, the amount of stories in like, just to make it okay in my own mind. Like, just so many of them. And this real sense of aloneness and separation from everything and everyone. And I feel like the gravity of that has only become apparent to me as I've taken my spiritual journey and really feel the connectedness now to everyone and everything in a way. It's like, it's impossible to ever fucking feel alone. Like, just not possible.
Well, you say that.
Well, first and foremost for me, this is the delusion, right? This was the delusion that I'm alone. And I'm separate to everything and everyone. And I don't have and I think the bigger part of that was, I don't have an impact on anybody. Which then was the story of, if I died right now, nobody would care. Yeah, like, it wouldn't matter to anyone. Yeah. Because I'm that alone, that separate. And that was my way of kind of trying to make it okay for myself. Everybody's alone, ultimately, So I just tried to I'm saying it like I used to use that to try and make myself feel better. I can't imagine how it made me feel better in any way, shape or form, to be honest. And it truly is in the connectedness that I feel now that I can look back and go, wow, like, I must have really abandoned myself to have felt that alone and that lonely and isolated from everything and everyone. And I believe my lowest point of that would have been sat on a sofa with a box of pills and a bottle of vodka, thinking, this is it, I'm done.
Yeah.
And it was one of those moments where thankfully wisdom kicked in.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have known that it was wisdom at that point, but and stopped me. But wow. I think for me that really, and that was coming out of a very, very, very abusive relationship. And that sense of complete he has taken everything that I am.
Yeah.
And just totally having lost all sense of me. But the biggest thing in that was that I hated myself. And it was the abandonment of myself which left me with that feeling. Because when my last relationship broke up, I was fully connected to myself. And I didn't abandon myself. And it was a completely different experience.
Yeah.
I didn't take it out on myself. And I really supported myself through it and really showed the love to me. So looking at it now, I can really see how far I abandoned myself in that situation. And feeling the level of connectedness I do now, I know that I was never alone. I just chose to see it that way because that made it easier then.
Wow. I guess that's the thing, isn't it? If it's kind of what you spoke to, like there's that being connected versus feeling connected.
Yeah.
Or how you see yourself. If you and if it looks bleak, disconnected, hopeless, then it's understandable you get to a point where you go, what's the fucking point?
Yeah, absolutely.
And, you know, I haven't felt that way for a hell of a long time, but something I notice now, like I notice more easily if I start to feel disconnected.
Yeah.
Like before, that whole thing looked like it was something happening to me. Don't get me wrong, I'm sure I can still get caught by it. But more so now it's like, oh, no, that's not a thing that's happening. Like that's a thing in my perception.
Yeah.
You know, it leads to one of my points, which was one of the delusions, which is, you know, it's just about circumstance. You know, and to what you were talking about, and I'm sure it looked absolutely real to you that you were, everything was hopeless and you were completely disconnected and alone, right?
Yep.
And yet then something kicked in to let you know, hang on, that might not be the case.
Yeah. Yeah. Because in that one moment, I wasn't alone. Because that's what stopped me. Yeah.
Yeah. And I've had countless, like not to that level, but I've had countless times when I recall where something's happened and I felt the aloneness. But because I've bought into, oh, it's about the circumstance, it's about, you know, what's happening, or it's about something about me, which you could say is the same bloody thing, really. Different side of it. And then in reacting to that, I've, you know, created the self-fulfilling prophecy, because then I disconnect, I retract. I've had it so many times where, I've got into that, like, and I see it now looking back, like it started this, it's like a domino effect, and it will start with me just maybe even feeling like, oh, I can't reply to that person for whatever reason, or just, it doesn't even, like, it's not even logical, it's just a feeling.
Yeah.
And then suddenly all that disconnection starts to mount up, and then it becomes like, well, the idea of breaking that, of reconnecting, just gets harder and harder. And then it's just like further down the hole, down the hole.
Yeah, that's the one. Keep digging.
Yeah. Well, and one of, like, another one of my points, actually speaking to around this kind of thing, was I just need someone who understands me. Now, this for me is, I used to have this a lot. I remember feeling alone but misunderstood was a real common thing, feeling misunderstood. Yeah. And what my mind would tell me often was like, I just need someone who gets me. I just need to find someone who gets me. And on some level, I do think there's a truth in that, about like finding your tribe. Like, I'm sure like we all know some people, they'll get us to a point, but then there's other people that get us more, you know, and and the person we're thinking that about probably thinks the same thing. Like, you click more with some people than others, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
But when I reflect on my experience of like, I just need someone who understands me, really what was going on was, it's like I had these, this feeling about myself, if you like, that I wasn't okay.
Yeah.
And therefore this fear about being rejected if I shared myself, if I opened up, if I was, open.
Yeah.
And therefore I was hoping there was a way to feel connected to somebody without having to go through the fear of opening up.
Yeah.
And being vulnerable.
Yeah.
Which, if you think about it, doesn't really work. And that's obviously why my mind created this. I just need to find that person who understands me.
Yeah.
As if I was going to, I don't know, find them on the shelf in the supermarket or something.
Yeah.
Because, like, how do we find out whether somebody gets us? We connect with them and see what happens.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, that didn't, I laugh about it now because it seems obvious, but it didn't back then, because the idea, well, and I don't know, it's somewhere between like I kind of knew that but was too scared to try it, or actually just didn't think that might be how it worked. It's like almost I somehow expected this person just shows up and it's like, oh, they'll understand me.
Yeah, they've got this. I can see it written all over their face.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and I think I've definitely met those people who I've connected with very quickly. But looking back, like, often those people would have been people who were really happy to share themselves with me very quickly, therefore making themselves safe to me. I wasn't necessarily the one going first.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I get that.
I think that probably gave me the illusion then, oh, I'll just be able to find that person. It's like, well, yeah, but I could probably increase my sense of feeling understood if I was actually giving enough of myself to allow myself to feel understood and therefore connected.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It's interesting because one of my points was kind of the flip of that.
Right.
Because it was like I would set a standard.
Right.
And nobody could ever meet that standard.
Funnily enough.
Yeah, like weird that. It's like, well, if they're not like that and they're not like that, then obviously they're not going to get me. Then that's not going to work. It's just like, and if they've never, then how are they going to understand about all of the things that I've been through? And obviously, yeah. So I would just kind of the bar, and nobody could ever like meet that. So then that would obviously fit the self-fulfilling prophecy. But then I'd sit there and go, well, I can't really help it. There's just nobody that's, the right person for me to connect with. Like, I've tried.
I've tried by scoping them out and ticking them off against my list.
Yeah,
from afar.
Absolutely, yeah. And as you know, with like when I create the list for this every week, there's numerous. So I can tell you that list was big.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Interesting themes in this one.
This kind of went where I didn't expect it to go, actually.
Yeah. But I think it's like, there are so many delusions. So many delusions. Yeah.
Well, I remember talking to a client actually not long ago. She was sharing what was going on for her. And I said to her, well, for me, a lot of loneliness can come from us hiding things about ourselves that we're actually afraid other people are going to see. Like, it can be quite, and she was like, oh my God, yeah, like I really feel that. Like, and that for me is really all about shame, or the fear of the shame really coming out. It's the fear of what you're going to do, that you're going to reject me if you see this thing about me. Yeah.
And for me, that feeds into, if I can't love and accept every part of who I am, then I'm always going to believe that nobody else can either.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, any other points from your list of
plenty?
How many?
Yeah, I guess one of the important ones that I've learned is my beingness when I'm trying to connect or I'm feeling lonely. Like, who am I being? when I'm in front of people. Because I know there was a period of time where I just had this like fuck off body language, literally like stay out. It's like, why don't people want to connect with me?
Yeah.
It's like, so yeah, it's like, really, who are you being? Like, that's, and then it's easy to go, well, you see, nobody likes me, and it's not me. I'm showing up. And it's like, no, you're being a bitch, Amy. I wouldn't even want to talk to you. So yeah, just all the different facets of the excuses to kind of go, well, I've tried. So they don't want it. Yeah. My facial expressions, everything. Actually, somebody fed that back to me once as well. Like, they met me at a training, and I used to keep this very kind of serious face. And she kind of came up to me after and went, oh, it's really funny. Like, you're a really nice person. When I first saw you, I thought you were a bitch. Thanks. Thanks. Yeah.
Oh, dear.
Probably really needed to hear that.
Yeah. Yes, that's some of those more painful blunt deliveries can be most helpful, even if they are.
Absolutely, yeah. So
yeah, I really resonate with that. It's like when I think back to, like, I remember I think I was on like an air cadet camp or something. And this is when I noticed that this kind of thing had happened, the same as when I was on school trips, that there were always these people who were like the kind of centerpiece of the trip.
Mm-hmm.
And people knew who they were, and I knew who they were, but it's like, people don't seem to remember me or know who I am.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, why is that?
Yeah.
And now looking back, it's obvious. It's because of who I was being, as how I was showing up.
Yeah.
I was showing up as the quiet kid who didn't share much about himself, who didn't really get involved because he was too scared. Mm-hmm. And it's like, well, that's why then. No, because there's no input for people to connect with, unless someone's like really going to make it their mission to go out of their way to connect with me and like open me up, as it were. And these people that were just sharing themselves openly, like, they were giving everything. So I felt I knew them, but of course they didn't feel like they knew me. Yeah,
completely.
So I resonate with, what you were talking about there. And two questions that for me are like, that I love, that I know I've shared before. Like, what am I afraid of? And how am I creating this?
Yeah.
Maybe the other way around. How am I creating this? What am I afraid of? Like, how is this about me and how I'm showing up?
Yeah. I guess one of the questions for me was, if I actually enjoyed being with myself, what difference would that make? No. Good questions. Loving it.
So, any closing thoughts on loneliness and what delusions keep us disconnected and stop us feeling the love again?
Yeah, I just want to say, know that you're never alone. And allow yourself the gift this Christmas.
And now I have Christmas songs in my head.
Yes. Of creating a beautiful connection with yourself. Like, acknowledge yourself, see yourself, really see yourself. Honestly, give yourself that gift. It is one of the best gifts I have ever given myself. So come back home to you.
I like that. So my closing thoughts are, loneliness and being alone aren't the same thing.
Yeah.
One's an experience and one is a choice. And if you're feeling lonely, for me, it's about looking at what's going on and being honest with yourself. Like, how might I be creating this? How might this be a result of my perception or somehow my doing? And that's not to blame, but it's to put responsibility and ownership, I guess, where it is, where the power is, rather than being upset at circumstance.
Yep.
And the key point for me, the love starts from within. You should see Amy's face. She's like, I've been waiting for that for 14 fucking episodes.
Oh my God. What a lovely Christmas present. Yes.
Well, I'll send the other one back to Amazon then.
No, don't do that.
It's true though, to exactly what you talked about though, right? It's like if essentially if I don't have a good relationship with myself, if I don't really like myself, if I think there's something wrong with me, then I'm going to disconnect.
Absolutely.
I'm not going to find a reason to connect, or I'm going to want to hide stuff.
Yeah. And because this is the Christmas episode as such, I'm going to say experiment with it. Just even for one day. Like, be good to yourself and see what that difference that makes in how you feel.
Cool. 14
Excellent.
episodes.
Yes, done and dusted. Love it.
You've been listening to the Notcast podcast, Life, Love, Misery and Deep Shit, with your TheraCoach hosts,
David Bird
and Amy Dave.
David is a transformative coach and hypnotherapist who guides his clients on a journey of self-exploration and transformation to smash the shit out of their mental stumbling blocks and send their emotional baggage packing, helping them to get back in the driver's seat, create a more powerful, loving connection to life, and unleash onto the world their bright, shining light of authentic give-a-fuckness. You can connect with David at his website, dbch.co.uk. That's dbch.co.uk.
Amy is a transformative spiritual and self-love coach and therapist who takes people on a powerful journey towards self-love and personal transformation. She empowers her clients to discover the truth of who they really are, their true purpose, and the truest expression of themselves, whilst enabling them to navigate life and its challenges with ease, grace, and above all, love. Create relationships that rock their world and let go of the toxic shit that holds them back. You can connect with Amy on her Facebook at facebook.com/amy.dave11. That's AMI.DAVE.11.